Been meaning to write down my paranormal experiences as a child growing up. Get ready, because this is a long one. These are experiences from different members of my family and over several years. So a little backstory first. I grew up in a sleepy little village. It's also known as the Garden of England, named as such for its picturesque gardens. Nothing much ever happened there. But little does anyone know of the village's dark past, a truly dangerous place in the 1600s where smuggling, murders and crime were rife. Things were so bad that the name of the village was changed and eventually the old reputation along with it. If you saw it now, you'd struggle to believe it could have ever had such a dark past. In the center of the village is a small cottage, across from it a quaint English pub, and next to that, a church. The old cottage, as you've probably guessed, is where I grew up. Now, below the cottage was a large basement we called the den. It was used by the whole row of houses during the wars as an air raid shelter as it was below ground, large and secure. Growing up in the house, I remember my parents telling me it was originally used for smuggling. They told me that there were old blocked up tunnels that ran from the pub and to the church that connected to our house. So this house was already at the center of some turbulent history already. I had already gone through some pretty weird and haunting happenings living there, well before I'd learnt any of this though. From as early as I can remember, I'd had night terrors nearly every night in my little box room right down the narrow hall. These nightmares were graphic, nothing a small child would make up, and it was the 90s, so parents found it easy to monitor what me and my sisters were watching on TV, reading, etc. We were never allowed to watch scary films. I was only allowed to read Goosebumps when I was about 12-13. At age 4/5, these nightmares were horrific. Half bodies dragging themselves up the stairs and the hallway up to my room. People stealing me from my bed and shadows creeping from underneath my bed. I also had a gollywog my parents put at the end of my bed. Apologies and no offense intended. I hated it. It was a gift from someone can't remember, that would also visit my dreams, crawling up my bed while I was sleeping and suffocating me. Of course it would have moved when I woke up, but my parents would put this down to me kicking it in my sleep, which is plausible. Despite this, my parents insisted I was being silly and would place it at the end of my bed. As soon I hit teenage years, I got rid of it, although thinking back now, I can't remember how I got rid of it. These were only a few of the horrific nightmares, but it was every night and I would wake up screaming bloody murder. Looking back, I'm not sure how my parents coped. There was also the hallway, leading up to the stairs, and then the landing. Any time I had to turn out the light to go upstairs would run, almost with my back to the wall. It always felt as if something was there, right behind you, grasping for an ankle to pull you back down with it. Pretty normal, right? Who hasn't had nightmares? Or run to their bed a little quicker after turning out the light when they were a kid? The thing is that my parents, or more my mom, would do it too. I remember my mom telling me when I was older, as more of the cowardly thing she ever did was when my little sister, who was now in my old box room, had a nightmare, she got into the bed with her, comforting her till she fell asleep. She told me that she had to get up and go back to her own room. She couldn't stand to be in there any longer. She was that terrified. Not that my parents' room was much better. It was right at the top of the stairs in my new larger room next to theirs. From both rooms you could often hear footsteps at night, coming up the stairs and along the hallway. I remember my mother telling me one night that the footsteps came thundering up the stairs right up to her side of the bed. She shuffled over to my dad's side. When he turned around and asked, "Did you hear that?" Now, my dad is a skeptic. He doesn't believe in anything paranormal, but that night, well, he can't explain it to this day. My older sister's room was in the den for a bit, and then I shared rooms with her for a little while room was being repainted. You'd think down there, in the dark basement, it would have been the scariest place to be. Even my older sister used to tease that we slept on the same level as the people across the road, the people buried in the cemetery behind the church. But weirdly enough, it was the rest of the house that turned out to have the most activity. I remember one night my little sister was sleeping in my parents' room when suddenly she woke up screaming in terror. It was so blood-curdling, all of us ran up the stairs to see if she was okay, scared she was hurt. We got to the room, she was stood up in bed still screaming, pointing at the window. Once she'd calmed down, she told us there had been someone stood at the window. This was one story up. No one could have been standing in the window. But even to this day she is adamant there was someone there. My mom also told me one night she woke up to see a figure of a girl in the doorway. Thinking it was one of us, she asked, "Are you okay, darling?" It moved behind the door. Puzzled, she got out of bed and moved the door away from the wall. There was no one there. Eventually my older sister got a job as a flight attendant, and my parents thought it better to swap rooms with her so she could leave at all hours easily to catch flights, etc. Looking back, I'm not sure if it was so they didn't have to be in that room any longer. When my sister was away on flights, I'd hear talking, and drawers opening and closing from that room. I'd just pull the covers over my head and say to myself I was just hearing things. One night though, when my older sister was at home, she came bursting into my room in hysterics. She told me that she woke to a girl crying at the side of her bed. Thinking it was our youngest sister, she went to comfort her. She suddenly realized it wasn't her. She pulled back quickly. That's when she was grabbed by her ankle and dragged right to the bottom of the bed. Terrified, that's when she ran straight into my room. That night we slept in the same bed with the lights on. A long time after that, I remember one day, during the day, looking up from my seat in the front room to see a girl with dark braided hair running through our hallway and up the stairs. I asked my father who it was, and he looked at me confused and told me no one was there. I went upstairs to where she ran to, and sure enough there was no girl there. Once me, my sister and my mom happened to be talking about our individual experiences. My mom's with the girl standing in the doorway, my sister with the girl next to the bed, and me with the girl running up the stairs. We realized it was all the same girl we had been seeing. White dress, and dark braided hair. At that moment a candle from the mantelpiece flew across the room. Luckily it wasn't lit. We were all shocked. There was no way it just fell that way. It was like someone had swiped it off the mantel. For me at least, the girl was one presence in the house, but I believe there was another, darker presence there. For example, the front room doorway, at certain times of the day there would be a smell of men's body odor. My dad was always meticulously clean, and it would even happen when he wasn't at the house. There were different occasions where different people could smell it at different times, with no explanation. Often the dog would also bark at nothing, and doors would open and close by themselves. I would very often, and very regularly, hear my dad's voice call me. When he was at work or not in the house, I would just brush this off as hearing things. However, it was only after moving to a new house years afterwards and looking back, realized it wasn't normal. As I grew up and lived in different places, I realized that it proved the cottage was definitely haunted, as we never had experiences like that again. Any other paranormal experiences I've had in my life have never been so negative or imposing. My mom always tried to comfort us by saying people may have died in the house, but many would have been born there too. But I truly believe something terrible happened in that cottage. Anyway, sorry it's so long. We lived there for 10 years, plus/a year, so I tried to shorten it down as much as I could.